hey, I have the honor is one of the individuals you're going to hear from later on is Leslie Dahl, who is the wife of Bob Dahl, who many of you guys know. And in the midst of working on the Growth Center, I said to Leslie, is there somebody who I could talk with and learn from who's doing great things in terms of education with those in the Middle East? And Leslie says, I have the perfect person. And there she introduced me about a year ago to Dr. Jennifer Murff. And so you are the executive director on the Mina Leadership Center. But before that, well, I say this, you were named among the top 100 influential evangelical leaders you ought to know. And so, Jen, as I bring you on, what is something that people ought to know about what you do in terms of your journey and how you got to Mina Leadership Center?
Well, I remember many, many years ago when my husband and I first went to the mission field, we were called to really serve Austrians in Austria. But instead, God really had different plans, Tommy. God put us in a church that were focused on Farsi speaking Afghans. And it was that moment where God began to plant a seed towards the Middle East in my heart. And here we are today with the Mina Leadership Center. And I would have never thought 20 years ago I'd be doing what I'm doing, but it all started in Austria.
Got it. Hey, you and I were talking about, just for basic knowledge, Mina Leadership Center. Talk about that. What does it stand for?
Absolutely. So MENA stands for Middle East, North Africa, or some people call it the Greater Middle East. There's about 24 countries that encompass the Greater Middle East, and different languages are part of that make up the Greater Middle East. You have Arabic, you have Kurdish, Farsi, and if you include Pakistan, there's Urdu, and so Hebrew. So there's many people groups and languages and just a melting pot of beautiful people.
Got it. And when you talk about North Africa, what does that mean for those who may not be familiar with geography?
So you have Morocco, Sudan, you have Liberia, there are, let's see, Algeria. And then though Egyptians would not say they're from North Africa, we would say from the West, we would say that Egypt is part of North Africa.
You got it. What does Mina Leadership do? Talk a little bit about that and also your journey, because before all this, you were a professor, and with your entrepreneurial spirit, you launched Mina Leadership Center.
Well, okay, let me share with you a little bit. So first, I was approached by an organization that launched research, that issued research kind of assessing the top 120 ministries throughout the Middle East, asking them outside of funds, because every ministry needs money, right? But outside of funds, what do you need? And 11 topics surfaced. These topics really focused on capacity building. And so I took this research and I created the Mina Leadership Center. We launched I started the process of launching in 2019, and we launched our courses in the midst of Corona in 2020. And since then, I mean, God has been so faithful. We've trained over 400 ministry leaders in 18 months. And when we talk about the word leader, I don't know, people use the word leader a lot. When we're talking about leaders or leadership, we're talking about people who are already existing in the region who are leading an entity, whether it's a church or a ministry or a seminary. And so we focus really on building capacity, accelerating their mission, because they're already having great impact. I mean, to be quite honest, these are heroes of the faith.
Yeah. And one of the things you mentioned is 11 qualities or 11 things that they express. What are some of those 11, Jen?
So there's capacity building, women in society, how to disciple Muslim background believers, many different areas. We actually took those 11 topics and we broke it down into 3 tracks. We focused on organizational operations. So how do you run an organization, the day-to-day activities, the goals, the objectives, how do we accelerate your mission? Number 2, digital society. How do we use digital means to accelerate the gospel? And then the third one is really focused on discipleship, on building the church. And so we want to give ministries the tools to expand and accelerate the gospel.
And so I think a lot of times, look, there is I think the seminaries and the churches, the Bible, the theology is so important. But Jennifer, you and I have talked a little bit about this. For somebody who went to seminary but worked in the business world, you have the one on organizational development. You're sending people who have great Bible and theology, but they don't know very much about sustainability, about budgeting, or about fundraising. And more, as the organization gets bigger, startup idea is great, but as it builds, you got to think through some of these different things.
For sure. One of the courses that we have focuses on human capital framework. It is so important. People don't leave organizations or they're not hired because strategies did a bad business plan. I mean, maybe that has a little bit, but it's because you don't have the right leadership in place. And human resource management, knowing how to manage your human resources, is vital to having a healthy organization. We also had a course focusing on 10x. Okay, so you have a strategic plan. Well, how do you execute it? And so we were walking with ministries hand in hand, helping them execute their strategic plan. Especially in the midst of Corona, people were having to go back to their strategic plans, if they even had one, and redo it in light of a digital context, because we all went online. We all had to figure out how to pivot and figure out how to do it in a new way.
Yeah. Hey, so Jen, let's say, for instance, a teacher who does organizational development does that track. What kind of teachers are you using? Are you using American Western teachers? Or are you using teachers within those cities? How now at the same time, Mina, Middle East, North Africa, it's large with so many different cities. How do you take account context, cultural context, how organizations operate? Because there's probably similarities, but there's a lot of differences amongst those cities.
For sure. We try to take bring all of our courses to be created and done by Indigenous leaders. Content, instead of content to context, we want to start from context and build our content. We do have a few Western instructors, but most of our instructors are from the region. An example is our human resource course. The guy who runs it is one of the vice presidents of a large bank in Jordan. And he runs the human resource side. And so he was able to bring a set of lenses that someone from the West would not have. And the challenges and the struggles. We had something that has happened in the Middle East where there's been a desire to see policies and whistleblower policies and things like that focused on sexual harassment. And so we're in the midst of building a course right now focused on how do we help ministries safeguard themselves from the issues that are plaguing the region right now. And this is something that each ministry, whether you're from the West or from the Middle East, we have to be diligent about protecting ourselves and then training our staff well.
How are you finding these teachers, Jen?
Well, sometimes we've met them or networked, or they were introduced to us from different partners. Our vice president of operations, his family has been part of Jordan from the very. When I asked him when I first met him, I said, "Tell me about yourself." And he was like, "Well, Jesus is my cousin." He's Jordanian. Jesus is my cousin, and Ruth is my great grandmother. He's comes from a Christian family. He's very well networked and known in the region, and so he had a lot of contacts and relationships. It's not like in the West, it's very transactional, but in the Middle East, it's not like that. It is all about relationship. And so even what we have accomplished in 18 months, it wasn't because the center's so great, which I think we're doing a great job, but it was because we built relationship with instructors, with participants. And so that was one of those things that I wanted to ingrain in the culture of the organization, that we're not transactional. We're relational, and that's from finding a participant to finding an instructor.
Yeah, yeah. And one of the things, I mean, even here, you and I live in America. One of the things that we talk about, Tom Lynn, our first speaker, is on, is something that the American church can learn from those international is, Jen, you are doing global missions in some sense, but a little bit different than what people imagine, but you're doing global missions. But one of the things that you're doing is finding what we call indigenous leaders, local leaders that know how to contextualize, that have a lot of similar experience, that they could bring the experience to be able to train and teach those people in their cities as well too. And another thing that you're able to use, you're not afraid to use marketplace leaders. Sometimes we feel like you have to have a PhD in seminary, you have to have church experience, but here you found an HR person who works in a bank, in a marketplace leader who now is able to help you equip those leaders in an area that they need.
Well, here's the thing. I have a doctorate. While I have a doctorate, I didn't want to get all of our instructors from academia. It was so
Correct.
important that we have practitioners. We have people who have blood, sweat, and tears on the ground, in the field, in those areas that they're leading in, whether it's in human resources or financial management, which are some of our courses. Having people who have maybe succeeded, and maybe there were challenges at the beginning, but overcame those challenges. Those are the type of instructors that we want to learn from their mistakes. We want to learn from their successes, but we didn't want to do it we didn't want to do it in sacrificing the gospel. So faith integration had to be part of every single one of our courses, because you can't talk about leadership and not talk about how faith is integrated into leadership. You can't talk about strategic plan, the role of the gospel in your strategic plan. So every single course, there had to be a faith integration.
Yeah. What technology is what you guys are doing in the Middle East? Is it more and more dependent on technology? And with that said, what are some of the courses in technology that you all are teaching?
So there are always going to be challenges with technology. We decided from the very beginning that we were going to have an online platform, a learning management system. That way, geography didn't keep us from really training and leveraging that technology to equip more leaders. However, there are people in the Middle East, such as in Syria, that they would come to class and they would be spotty. And so we do know there's limitations to technology. However, we have launched a course over the past year focusing on ministries who've done face-to-face training and they've needed to pivot, but they didn't know how. They didn't know the type of learning management systems.
Yep.
They didn't know how to teach online. They didn't know how to engage. They didn't know
Interesting.
anything. And so what we did is we've put about 40 ministries into a course in 3 different cohorts, and we taught them how to use a platform, an online platform. We taught them how to engage adult learners online. And then they had the option for a year to use our platform in what we call Powered by MLC. And we became their backend. We became their administrative support so that they didn't have to stop what God called them to do. They could keep on running. And so Powered by MLC it's been a successful course. We've had 2 courses launched through Power by MLC and a line of more that are getting ready to. And if they don't use the Powered by MLC, we have a partner program that, hey, you've started a class, you went through our program, you've learned all these skills on online learning and teaching. You've chose a different platform for your learning management system, but we're still going to promote you.
Yeah.
So we're going to be launching a new website soon, but on our website, we'll have our partner programs that you can go and look and find a course that we're not offering, but through our partners. And so we really believe in what God's doing in and through them.
Yeah. Jen, you mentioned Powered by MLC is, let's say, for instance, you have partners in Libya or Egypt and all that stuff. What kind of courses are they launching and who is it geared for? Is it geared toward churches? Is it geared toward pastors? Is it geared toward lady leaders? And how do they determine what those courses are for?
So historically, we have focused on equipping the Christian church and nonprofits.
Yeah.
We have recently just finished a course yesterday with a Farsi speaking Iranian ministry where they had 25 leaders from Iran that they equipped them to launch a virtual church.
Okay.
And that was incredible. We have another ministry, another Farsi speaking Iranian ministry that is focusing on Bible study and equipping and discipling the church. The fastest growing church right now is actually in Iran. And so we're seeing a huge rise of believers and having these online courses for them and equipping both the leaders who are stepping into leadership and the disciple, which we're all disciples, is so important. These two ministries have taken those tools and have launched courses.
Yep. All right. Let me take a step back a little bit. And for those who are just following us on it, I found this very fascinating as well, too. So powered by Mina Leadership Center, let's talk a little bit about Iran. If you could share with the group, give us a context of Iran, and then also the type of leaders that are in Iran and how different it is for, let's say, for instance, I'm going to bring it from the context of Chicago, is you go to Bible college or you've worked for a while, then you go to seminary for 4 years, and then you go to church and work in the church. That is probably different in Iran. Give us a context and give us a type of leaders and churches that are running over and how then Powered by Mina works with them.
So one of our partners, the ministry was birthed out of a large ministry here in the United States. And the founder of that ministry, he was a chiropractor by trade, and God called him into ministry. He actually fled Iran due to war. And while he was at home, like during the war, his parents sent him over to Southern California. Now, Southern California is like the second or third largest Iranian population outside of Iran. I'm not sure if you know that. You have Toronto, and then you have Southern California, and then Iran. And he was about 10 years old. And when he became an adult, he lived with his older brother, no parental figures at the time because they weren't able to get the paperwork to come over. The Lord showed up and changed his life through a dream that his mom actually had. And he ended up starting Heart for Iran and leaving his private practice to start a media ministry. And they are doing incredible work. They do television and courses, of course, with us. They do all kinds of discipleship programs, but it's amazing. I mean, the Iranians are coming mostly from the professional world. God's showing up to them in dreams and vision using media. I mean, here's the thing. I remember there being a time where doing something online or from the television was like not.
Yeah.
You remember that? Remember whenever it was almost taboo, like that's not church and that's not.
Yeah.
But I see how God is using media and using online, and technology to be able to reach people that would never be reached with the gospel.
Correct.
And Iran is a closed nation.
Yeah.
What a great opportunity to advance the gospel through technology.
Yeah. And Jen, how are a lot of these ministries, or even let's say Iran or a different place like that, how are they able to sustain themselves? Is it through local donations over in Iran, over in the Middle East and all that stuff? Is it Americans subsidizing or Western subsidizing? How does that look like in a lot of those things in terms of sustainability?
Most of the funds are coming from the West. And this is why the church in the West is so important. I believe you can look at different countries around the world and how God calls them to support the church in certain ways. And, there are several countries throughout the world that I believe God's called to be the financiers. And so the ministries that we work with are financed heavily from Western countries, not just the United States, but Western countries.
Got it. Obstacles in the midst of launching Mina Leadership Center. I mean, literally, you started from the ground up and built it. what are some of the obstacles that you had to face or probably still facing today? Because you're dealing with, yes, Middle East, North Africa, but it's a complicated region. What were some obstacles that you've had to face?
The first thing was internet. We were launching an online program, and we wanted to reach and really equip the most vulnerable leaders in the sense of where they're working with the vulnerable, and they're working with closed countries, and with that comes internet issues. We've mostly seen that in Syria, Yemen, most other countries. Their internet's great. I mean, they may not have electricity, but they can get internet. So it doesn't happen often. So that is a challenge. Another challenge that I thought I would face, and I haven't faced, is me being a female leader. I thought that me being a female leader in a very male-dominated context would limit us. However, the leaders that we work with in the Mena have been nothing but respectful and honoring and supportive and encouraging and networking. So any type of idea that people have, or that it's chauvinistic, I have not experienced that. And we've worked with over 400 leaders.
Sure.
And so I guess I thought coming into it, I was going to experience things, and I haven't experienced that at all.
Yeah. Wonderful, wonderful. Talk to me about Afghanistan. It's been in the news a lot. Does Mina do very much work in Afghanistan? And if so, what do you do?
So the organization that launched us does quite a bit in Afghanistan. And so I spoke with a leader yesterday that is actually running the operations for the work they are doing in Afghanistan. And we want to personally be a support for the leaders that are building underground infrastructure. We want to be that support. We do a lot in Pakistan. And so with the rush of refugees going to Pakistan, going to Brazil, going to the different countries, we want to help prepare leaders for what they're about to step into. We actually have a course that we're going to be launching, I guess next year. I don't know which quarter, but focusing on ministering to refugees. What does that look like? What is it? What does it take? What are the challenges? What are the, I mean, we're talking about 82 million people that are dispersed and displaced. And so we want to give them the tools they need, whether it's knowing how, on the practical side, what can we provide them? So we're excited about that course, and the needs there are so complex that we are working with an organization that specifically focuses on refugees, and we've partnered with them. And then our chairman is one of the co-founders of Heart for Lebanon. And so they've given us so much insight as we worked with them to help create a course to meet the needs of ministries that focus on refugees.
Yeah. Mina, I know you've been around for a number of years. Can you share a little bit, a couple of stories, a couple of individuals that encourages you as you've been journeying throughout the startup?
Yes. When we first started, I really felt the Lord tell me that he was going to do things that I could not even imagine or dream of. And I'm not saying I didn't believe him, but when you step into something new, you wonder, what's this going to look like? And Rafiq is a story that just encouraged me. Rafiq Wagdi, he runs a ministry called Message to All Nations, and he's Egyptian. He's a medical doctor. And I first met him when he was taking a course with us when we first started on discipleship. And then he took another one and another 5 courses he's taken. And I asked him one day, I said, Rafiq, you're on television on Al Karma. You are doing incredible work. Like, you're smart, you're brilliant, you're a medical doctor. Why are you taking courses at the center? And he says, Jen, I didn't go to business school. I didn't even know what God had in store for me. And the courses that you provided me gave me just enough to be able to build my capacity so that I could launch into greater things. Well, one of the courses that he took was our virtual church course.
Yeah.
And in this virtual church course, there was another fellow. Well, during the live session, Rafiq left to go to the restroom. And when he came back, everyone was in breakout groups. And he was like, oh man. And there was one guy in there from Morocco. And they ended up talking and ended up partnering together to launch a virtual church, reaching non-believers or a non-Christian background believer. And that's amazing. Who would have thought that in a digital setting, we would see partnerships happening? I mean, real partnerships that are making a big difference. Another story I'd like to share with you is a woman, her name's Rasha. And she's a Palestinian from Israel. And she focuses specifically on student ministry. And, you know, there are challenges that they face in Israel that a lot of countries don't necessarily face in the Middle East due to Palestinian and Jewish relations. And she's also took 5 courses, and her husband took 2 or 3 courses with us. But one of the courses was the online learning course. And so now as they begin to work with students across the country, not just on one campus, but across the country, they built a course, and now they're having their students go through leadership courses to get them ready for the marketplace as a Christian in a very hostile region towards the gospel. And that just encourages my heart that God is at work. And who would have thought?
Yeah. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Okay, so I'm going to ask you a basic question, a question that I just don't understand, and maybe you can help guide me. Is within there's Iran, there's Iraq, there's Afghanistan, there's Lebanon, all that. Is there tension amongst some of these different cultures? Is there disagreement? How do you deal with some of these tensions? How do you help these guys understand what it means to respect each other? But I say this because growing up in a Chinese community, and have Korean friends and Japanese friends, even though we're all Asians, there is tension. How do you deal with some of those tensions? And that's the part that I don't understand. I want to hear your thoughts on.
I think this was one of the biggest fears that I had, Tommy. Like, how are we going to mitigate the challenges that we stepped into? It's not like living in America. We have a couple 100 years of issues. We're talking about thousands of years of conflict within the region. And we encourage collaboration at the center. And collaboration is modeled by us, which is why we do things like Powered by MLC or other things. But we've seen breakthrough in these areas that is only by the grace of God, literally. It is, we've tried as an organizational culture to create a place of collaboration, but I think God has given his blessings on it. We are seeing people work together, people from different backgrounds. You have, Jews and, Arab Israelis in one class. You will have Moroccans and Algerians with, Iranians in one class. I mean, and they're discussing and talking and collaborating. And this is nerve-wracking, the things because listen, just because people are in ministry doesn't immune them to conflict.
Correct.
It is what it is. And so, but we have not experienced that. And hopefully we don't. Please pray for us as we are navigating landmines, really. But we have literally the best ministry partners on the face of the planet.
Yeah. And that was the one thing that I wanted to, as a naive individual, when you suddenly get all of these different countries and cultures in a room, how then do you deal with problems that their countries have battled over for many centuries or many decades, that now as ministry partners, you love the Lord, you have Christ who is in the center of it, but you're dealing with some of these cultural items as well too. So, yeah.
Yeah, we don't talk about, we don't bring in political ideologies. I mean, there are certain things that we avoid as an organization so that we don't step on those landmines. And Fadi, our VP, does a great job helping navigate those. We also know everyone by name. And so if there would be tension, we could pick up the phone and really handle things and bring people together. So anyway, continue to pray for us.
Well, you know, and here's another question that is, you're considered in many seminary circles, for those who are in seminary, who's watching this, you are considered non-formal education. There's formal education, all the other stuff. So one question that came through is, how does Mina partner with seminaries? Jen, I know I'm representing Growth Center and Northern Seminary. We have worked with you to work on partnering on a couple classes, which we will do more in the future. How do you work with seminaries? How, if even, is there a clear answer for that?
So here's our little internal tagline, Tommy. We're academic in nature, practical in application.
Yeah.
I think of like if you go and get your doctorate in business, you're not a PhD, you're a practitioner. We've been in discussions with several universities, and we want to see that. Here's would be my dream, is that you have ministry leaders who would never, ever, ever be able to afford formal education. But we could be a vehicle through articulation agreements or other type of programs to help be a vehicle to give them what they need beyond even us. Yeah. And so it's a goal of ours.
Yeah. One of the things for those who are watching, I really believe in partnerships. I really believe in finding like-minded individuals like a Dr. Jennifer Murff, who is, let's say, for instance, I was connected through Leslie Dahl. Leslie is a philanthropist. They're very generous. They are working with different organizations. I said, Leslie, can you please introduce me to a partner working in the Middle East who I could partner with? And so now she introduced me to Dr. Murff. And so now we're working through some of these courses. And initially it took a couple of months for us to get to know each other. We had to figure out, do our hearts align? Do we get along well with each other? And also, what are some tangible projects we can come along with? Because there are certain goals I have working under the Growth Center. Our person who actually endowed us wants to provide theological education accessible for all. Well, what does that look like? Because it's so general, then I got to find a like-minded partner who I could trust and work with. But then Jennifer had to find a partner where it's not one-sided, where she's doing all the work and they're taking all the credit. So there had to be a partnership with trust. And it's hard finding partners sometimes, right? Yeah. We talk a lot about let's partner together, but tangible partners is actually hard.
It is. And it takes time and it takes trust. And, but when you find the right partner, I mean, the Growth Center has been such a gift to the Mena Leadership Center. And I am so thankful for your ministry and all that God's doing in and through you and the work that you do.
Yeah. But in terms of partnerships, I love to, for you to, there's two other questions, but with partnerships, we will have to be very direct because look, for those who are working with partners and ministries or those who are funders sitting on here, people say just partner together. All right. It's easier said than done. It involves building a trust and that takes time in relationships. But then at the same time, a growth in a partnership also takes time. So you're going to have to find one tangible project that you're working on together, test that, work through the disagreements, work through some of the issues you foresee, and then keep growing it versus just say, we're going to partner together and then just don't know what to do with it. Do something, do one simple project together. What have you found is important in partnerships, Jen?
I think there has to be a mutual benefit for both. It's not a partnership if it's not going to benefit both parties. Yeah. And I think that people have to have a lens of service towards seeing the other people successful, not just tooting their own horn. Yeah. And I think that's important, or people get really disenfranchised, and we don't want to see that in our partnerships. We want to serve well.
Yeah, and the reason why, at least for me, under Resource Global, or specifically with the Growth Center, why a partnership working in the Middle East with Dr. Jennifer Murff and Mina Leadership Center works is if Tommy Lee and Growth Center tries to do something in the Middle East, I don't have the partners. I don't know the layout of the land. I had to ask Jennifer what NA meant, what North Africa was, and what that was considered on. And so sometimes, as much as you want to be the one leading it, you're not going to do it. MENA Leadership Center knows the Middle East. They are experts in the Middle East. They have developed the relationships in the Middle East. So as a result, find ways to partner. You may not get everything done that you want, but in a partnership means that both sides learn how to give into each other for what's a mutually beneficial partnership. And so as a result, thank you for showing me that. And I think it's been a journey that you and I got to meet each other during COVID. We've never met each other in person. And so everything has been online. And thank you for your graciousness. Thank you for just the communication and just for being who you are.
Likewise, we feel the same with you guys.
Yeah. Hey, last question. What can the church at large learn from the church in the MENA region? As you have seen, what can the church at large learn from the church in the MENA leadership region?
Ah, my goodness. You know, we have really resilience. I think resilience is the word that comes to mind. I mean, if you think about the church, the historical church in the Middle East, I mean, this is literally where Jesus was born, the Bible was codified. I mean, our historical roots are in the Middle East. And if you look throughout the past 2,000 years, the only thing that has been steady is a historical church that has been thriving. Even when the media tells us that it's not there and there's all bad news, my friend, that's a lie because God is at work. And so resilience, the church is resilient, it's strong. I mean, I think about what scripture talks about, how people will be swayed to the left and the right. I don't see that in the church in the Middle East. I see just a group of believers who have been steady for generations. And now we're seeing a new growth in the church from Muslim background believers, or from Muslims who are coming to faith through evangelism, dreams, visions, media, you know, all kinds of things. And so I believe that God is at work. And so I pray that the American church can be just as resilient as the church in the Middle East.
Yeah. Dr. Murff, this has been a productive conversation. Where can they find more information about what you're doing and also what MENA Leadership is doing?
You can find our website at www.menaleadershipcenter.com. You can find us on social media at the MENA Leadership Center. You're welcome to email me if you're interested. I would love to share with you. And we actually host webinars every month with people from the West who just want to know what God's doing. And we have guest speakers come on. And so get involved in that, sign up and learn and grow and come on the journey with us.
And I know it's naturally said, ministries and nonprofits all need funding, but if there is tangible ways for those who are watching it, a church would like to partner, individual and marketplace leaders would like to donate their time. Is there opportunities to do that? What does that look like over at MENA?
Thank you for asking. Yes, we are in a campaign right now where we need to raise $80,000 to provide scholarships with the issues that are plaguing the region right now. In Lebanon, it's costing, like $40 for a loaf of bread, and they can't afford our courses. Our Syrian friends, our friends in Yemen, we do not want to turn anyone away. Yeah. And so the cost to put someone through the center, the real cost, is about $2,100. Yeah. And so we want to provide scholarships. So we're raising money for, I think, 75 scholarships by the end of the year. And so we'd love for you to participate in that with us. But we also need prayer, guys. I mean, I have never done anything like this in my life. And the spiritual warfare that is present is real. And we need intercessors. We need people to genuinely, in all honesty, pray with us, pray for salvations to happen on the field, that there's unity amongst our team, amongst the teams that we're serving. And then just continue to engage with us.
Yeah. Dr. Jennifer Murff, thank you